Welcome to this week's edition of the First Reading, where I will go over the first reading for daily Mass from Monday through Saturday this week. Each daily Mass or each week of daily Mass has a certain section of the Bible that's featured, and this week it's the book of Ezekiel. So the book of Ezekiel takes place around 600 years before Jesus is born, and Ezekiel actually is preaching from Babylonia because a lot of Jewish people got deported from Jerusalem to Babylonia, and then Ezekiel is preaching to his fellow Jews in Babylonia. So on Monday, we actually don't start with the book of Ezekiel since it's the feast of St. Lawrence the Deacon. We start off with 2 Corinthians, where Paul says God loves a cheerful giver. In the case of St. Lawrence, he cheerfully gave his life for the faith in Jesus Christ. So then on Tuesday is actually when we start hearing from the prophet Ezekiel. And on Tuesday, we see that God tells Ezekiel, hey, Ezekiel, start preaching to my people, but first eat this scroll, physically eat this scroll of my word, because you're going to preach my word to all of this rebellious house that has rebelled against me. And so Ezekiel agrees, and then he physically eats the scroll, and then he begins preaching to the people. And then the next day on Wednesday, we see Ezekiel having a vision of what's going on over in Jerusalem. And in his vision, he sees two things. The first thing that he sees is the people that were worshiping idols in Jerusalem. They die a violent death. And the second thing that Ezekiel sees is that he sees the glory of the Lord physically leaving the temple, because all of the people have gone so far astray. Even people worshiping in the temple had gone so far astray from the Lord. So then on Thursday, we see Ezekiel imitating what exile's like for all of the people in Jerusalem. So God calls Ezekiel to do something a little strange. He says, Ezekiel, leave your house over in Babylonia and walk through the town, and walk through the town with a suitcase in your hand to symbolize all of the people that will be deported from Jerusalem that are still in Jerusalem. And then go up to a place in the wall, go find a wall, and then start digging a hole inside of that wall. And your action will symbolize the Babylonians breaking down the walls of Jerusalem. So that's Ezekiel's vision on Thursday as well. On Friday, Ezekiel continues preaching against the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he reminds them of their origins. So Ezekiel says, inhabitants of Jerusalem, 1,000 years before my preaching of Ezekiel, God adopted all of these inhabitants of Jerusalem into the Jewish people. So before God adopted them, they were just like lost adolescent girls, and then God adopted them. But then what happened was that these adolescent girls, after becoming adopted, they became very beautiful. They became so enchanted with their beauty that they ended up becoming harlots and started prostituting themselves to other gods. But then God says, don't worry, I will still rescue you. I will still bring you back to where you once were. I'll help you get rid of your harlotry of the past. And so that's on Friday. And then on Saturday, once again, we go away from the book of the prophet Ezekiel, because Saturday is the feast of the Assumption of Mary, where we celebrate Mary going body and soul up into heaven. And so the first reading comes from the book of Revelation, where the author has a vision of a woman clothed in the sun about to give birth to a child. And so there's a dragon that wants to kill this woman and her child. So then God helps her escape into the desert, where she is able to give birth to the child, and then all in heaven rejoice. And so for all of us as Catholics, we interpret this as the Blessed Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus, which is why we have it as our first reading for this feast of Mary. And so those are the daily Mass readings. This week we featured the book of the prophet Ezekiel. Hopefully this video will help you appreciate this section of salvation history, especially if you follow the daily Mass readings in the Catholic Church. So thanks again for watching. Until next week, God bless.